Welcome, and thank you for joining us today as we come together to recognize National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. My name is Quincy J. Roberts Sr., and I am a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Zeta Kappa Sigma Chapter here in Boston. I am honored to serve as your moderator for this very important event and discussion. Today, we gather not only to raise awareness about the impact of HIV in the Black communities, but also to celebrate the resilience, share knowledge, and promote health equity. This day reminds us that through education, conversations just like this, testing, prevention, and treatment, we can work towards ending the HIV/AIDS epidemic and reducing the stigma that surrounds it. Throughout the program, you will hear from experts, advocates, and community members who are making a difference and want to make a difference in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Together, we will explore resources, discuss challenges, and inspire action to support the health and well-being of our communities. As a reminder, please use the chat. We ask that you remain on mute until the question and answer portion of the panel. This is definitely just the start. It's an ongoing conversation. So please, let's get started and stay involved.
Good afternoon, family. Happy National Black HIV and AIDS Awareness Day. I go by the name of Curtis Santos, the Executive Director of Boston Elizabeth Gay Urban Foundation, and I serve as the President of Boston Black Pride. Today is really an important day. Boston Black Pride and Blue Foundation has been doing really great work with creating a multimedia campaign about know better, live better. If we know better, we live better. And that campaign is really driven through a cultural lens. We are creating content with some of the fraternity brothers here, and also with community at large, Black and Brown community specifically, to really destigmatize what HIV testing look like and really become more connected as a community when it comes to testing. I'm here today to talk more so about the Evolve Care Together Coalition that we have created last year. We have created the Evolve Care Coalition to serve as an incubator for the Suffolk County area here in Boston. The Evolve Care Coalition is made up of 13 orgs and community health centers that's really centering how do we really plug in to support each other around folks getting tested, and which we do know it is a public health matter, especially for our younger generation who don't have this information at hand. And they are the targets right now that are actually being infected more. And so we have to rely on each other in this time to be able to give the information and reliable information to each other. And data sets from the CDC are not accurate. The incidence rates are not being reported accurately or thoroughly. And so it is really upon us to be that data set and give that information out to our communities at large, especially those in the Suffolk County, which is the large Boston Black and Brown communities and Latinx communities at hand. Before I exit and turn it back over to Brother Quincy, I just want to call a few things to action. This month, we're in the trenches, I'll call it. This month, we're really in the trenches, making sure that we're uplifting Black and Brown folks getting tested. But more solely, we're looking at how do we get our Black males tested at a higher rate. Our Black males do not get tested at higher rates. Our counterparts do get tested at higher rates. And so we want to destigmatize that as well, saying that we are too important around health equity. And so I lead with saying this, that we are launching our test challenge with our fraternity brothers here on this call today, starting today actually, going to February 28th. We'll be doing a challenge with the Multicultural AIDS Coalition, and we're asking for all Black and Brown people to go get tested at the Multicultural AIDS Coalition from Tuesday to Friday from 12 to 7. But also we're looking for our brothers to go get tested mostly in that aspect of the challenge. And we're looking to get at least 25 brothers, Black brothers, tested in this challenge. Tonight, this conversation doesn't end on this call today. We gather in community this afternoon at 5 p.m. here in the city of Boston at Long Live Brewery in Roxbury, and we gather in communities for community connection dinner. in which we will also be doing testing and having these conversations in person this evening from 5 to 10 p.m. Also, our campaign launch is on February 28th, in which we are creating this multimedia campaign to be as enthusiastic, as interactive as possible. And we ask that you come and join us on February 28th at the Thelma D. Burns Community Center at 575 Warren Street. And that event will be taking place from 1 to 5 p.m. We also are creating pop-up clinics because we know that if access is not given to us, we need to meet folks where they're at. And so we're actually creating pop-up clinics, which our first pop-up clinic would be February 14th, Valentine's Day, which is also Heart Health Month. And we're doing that at Lena Park Community Center and looking at communities from a whole health perspective and not just saying testing and HIV testing is our number one thing. Black and brown folks are being targeted around health equity. And so we're making sure that we're giving the whole healthcare aspect to our community members at large. Lastly, I would say that prevention resources and linkage to care and whole health care is our number one priority at the Blue Foundation. And if you guys to our website, lesbigateurbanfoundation.org, you will find our Know Better, Live Better, Evolve Care campaign. And when you click that link, you'll see different health centers who are part of that campaign. And I'll say this, lock in and get tested. And I'll turn it back over to you, Brother Quincy.
Thank you so much, Curtis. Don't feel bad if you didn't catch everything. All the wonderful work that Brother Curtis is doing. Yeah, just kudos to you because we were talking earlier. A lot of events around National HIV Awareness don't happen. That's a part of the reason why I encouraged our chapter to do this event. But Brother Curtis is doing the work 365, and I appreciate you and your team for all the work that you're doing. Again, Brother Queen will have that information in the chat, the flyers. So we have an after party. We have free testing, free food. You can't beat that. Free 99. So again, go out there and join us at 5, as well as schedule your appointment so we can show not only the city of Boston, Boston Public Health, but ourselves that we care about testing. All right. So next, before we get into the panel, I want to introduce a brother to talk about access. Curtis did a wonderful job of talk about what's going on right now. But before we get into the panel, I want to make sure that people know what's out there, know what's helping us thrive, not only survive. And I couldn't think of a better brother to tell us what's going on out there in the world because he was my first friend here in the city of Boston. And in the process of that friendship, he taught me all about sexual health and the importance of sexual health, just being a Black man in America. He is also my frat brother. So super excited that he can join us way out of Philly. Sorry the Eagles are not in the Super Bowl, but you all will get over it. And without any further ado, Blake Raleigh.
Greetings and salutations, and thank you for having me, Quincy. It really is an honor to sort of be on this panel, and I think Quincy and I have known each other for 15 years, and so to do this is really sort of full circle for me. I am on in this particular space in two capacities, and I want to be clear about that. One is to support my brother Quincy, but also is to support the work that my girl Janice Hyatt is doing as a representative of Gilead Sciences in the Boston area. So some of you may be familiar with her. In the Boston area, she's been there for quite some time and is doing really fabulous work to ensure that all of our communities, but specifically Black and brown folks, have access to the things that are going to keep them whole and healthy. Speaking of access to things, many of you may be familiar with concepts such as treatment as prevention, as well as PrEP, and U equals U. So really making sure that our communities understand that for those folks who live on the HIV side of the continuum, diagnosed with HIV, that treatment is out there and it works. There are a number of different types of treatments. There are a number of different modalities. I mean, it's really important to always to have conversations with your provider to understand what thing is going to be best for that person, but ultimately knowing that if you are on treatment and you achieve undetectable, you obviously are untransmittable through sex. The other half of that continuum is for folks who are not living with HIV, and I think this is a really timely conversation, particularly considering the rise in infections for Black women, as well as some of the really exciting science that has come out that really supports Black women's preventative needs. It's really, really important that we understand that PrEP is not just for men who have sex with men or people who identify as queer, but in the 2026 era, and really sort of prior to that, but now we want to make sure that Black women, and more than ever specifically, as well as Black men, understand that prevention is your responsibility and that there are a number of different prevention modalities out there for PrEP. So there are a variety of orals, and there are also some injectables, both every 2 months, as well as an injectable that you can now receive every 6 months. And so it's really important that folks know what options are out there that are for them, how to get them, and how they benefit them. All of them are highly efficacious, and so you kind of have the world at your fingertips. The other piece that I will say as a member of or a representative of Gilead Sciences is that we are here to support your prevention access needs. So I'm a firm believer that if you're paying more than $1 for PrEP medication or for HIV treatment medication, you are paying too much for it. And so Gilead Sciences is really here. Your reps are in your areas to figure out how we remove costs as a barrier to treatment as well as to prevention, because we see often that folks don't take preventative care because they think it costs too much. So we really want to make sure that people know what access and support options are available to them to achieve medications at low cost or no cost. The last thing I'll say before I turn it back to Brother Quincy is I started my career at the Fenway Institute in Boston. So I worked on the initial clinical trials as related to PrEP. So if you have questions regarding various PrEP medications or modalities, please feel free to ask me, as well as if you need questions or answered on how to access any of those things, I'll be here as a resource to do that. So thank you, Brother Quincy. I turn it back to you.
I was saying, I'm sorry. Shout out to Blake, Fenway Health, and all the people over there that do the good work at Gilead, as well as Jenny Hyatt. Blake will be in the conversation today in the chat box. If you need to ask him something specific, you don't feel comfortable asking in a group, please send him a private message and he'll get that answer for you, as well as Curtis if you need anything. And last but not least, before we get started, Brother Queen is also in the chat. So if you need to ask me something, I am not looking at the chat. Brother Queen will be doing that for us. All right, now let's get into this very holistic conversation, I like to call it. Once again, I just want to thank you all for being here and your commitment to awareness, advocacy, and change. So let's meet our panelists, starting with my sorrow, Kim Wilson.
Hi, Quincy. Hi, I'm Kim Wilson. I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, Delta Omicron Zeta Chapter. I'm also a very big community advocate for HIV, particularly HIV in the Black women and women in general. As a woman who's affected with HIV, I'm very vocal. Through my travels in HIV as being a woman with it, I've learned that we're not at the table. And I believe earnestly that if a woman is not at the table, there is no table. I'm very highly into research. I'm the co-chairperson of the Fenway Health HIV Advisory Board. I believe that our voice, maybe a person who's affected or effected with HIV, has to be there. People have to know it when they do research, because if our voice is not there, it's just research that's done. My credentials is, as I said, I'm on the Fenway Health HIV Board. I'm the global representative for the ACT, the AIDS Clinical Trials Group, representing the Massachusetts, New England area, and also on their consumer board, executive board. I'm on boards on the national, state, and local Boston area. I advocate for ladies who voices are not heard. I believe that a voice has got to be heard. And I hear and I talk to my sisters in the community, and I bring their voice to the table. And that's where I think it be. I believe highly in that if we think locally, what we do here is going to be seen globally. So being a presence locally and telling my voice and my story, my journey about HIV, I know that it will go globally. And I thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Sarah. Kim does it all. She's been doing it for a very long time. I've known her for over 15 years and the work she's doing. So kudos and appreciation to you and the work that you continue to do. Next, I have another blue and white family member, Brother Spencer Collins.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Before we start, I want to say thank you to Quincy for intentionally creating this space and cultivating it for us because people don't do this. And so, my brother, hats off to you. If you want to know more about me, check my bio. I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about me because this conversation is not about me. It's about the people who have come on to learn more and talk about HIV and AIDS. So check my bio. Let's start this conversation.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you. Next up, we have the amazing and incomparable Bishop Robert C. Perry. He's not frat, but his brother is my LB, so he's frat adjacent to the blue and white family. Bishop Perry.
Quincy, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and everyone else that's on this call. My name is Robert Perry. I pastor. I have the privilege of pastoring Kingdom Builders Worship Center, 301 Columbia Road, Dorchester, Massachusetts. I think this is a very important conversation, and I salute everyone who's doing the work, who's in the trenches, helping our community to gain knowledge and to do better around our awareness around HIV and AIDS. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bishop. Next up, he's a good brother. He's not a Sigma, but he's still a good guy. Amazingly wonderful and knowledgeable brother Victor Terry.
Hello, everybody. My name is Victor Terry. I am the current president of the Delta Omega chapter of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated here in the city of Boston. I am a K-12 educational leader, and I care strongly around youth advocacy and cultivating belonging for Black men, particularly Black queer men. I'm excited to join this conversation today and out to all my brothers that join. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And last but certainly not least, a childhood friend. We grew up together in Henderson, North Carolina. She's doing amazing work down south. And if you follow her on social media, she is always talking about prevention and how we can just be better and be better in conversation with each other. I had to have her a part of this conversation just to add what she knows. That's Felicia Wimbush Cruz.
Thank you, Quincy. Thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Felicia. I'm an AIDS certified registered nurse. I've been working in HIV care for about 5 years. Born and raised in Henderson, North Carolina. That's, as Quincy said, that's how I met him. And I work at an HIV clinic, Ryan White Clinic in Henderson. I'm excited to be here today. Look forward to hearing everything everyone has to say. That's it.
All right. Got the introductions. Let's get into the convo. Let's start with Spencer on this one. How does stigma affect conversation about HIV prevention and care? Brother Spencer.
So stigma shapes everything, but especially in HIV and AIDS prevention care, because it's controlled by what people feel safe in the space asking or saying. If people don't feel safe asking a question or saying, bringing up the issue, then it's going to be a problem. Like with stigma, there's judgment that's attached, there's discrimination attached. And even though we're 40 plus years into the epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, there's so much stigma that prevents us from having real, authentic conversations in a space that's cultivated and specifically designed for us. You and I have had this conversation. So often, so many organizations get the funding to speak specifically to our community, but they don't include us in the conversations of what that should look like. Ultimately, this just puts our community at a greater risk because as a black man who's gay and HIV positive, I'm still dealing with the stigma that's attached. And although we think it's been erased, it hasn't. I still, if I show you some of the DMs that I get, if I show you some of the comments that people make behind my back, like it's part of the reason why the DL the whole DL phenomenon is so high because of the stigma that's attached to HIV and AIDS. And unfortunately, that stigma has been attached to the LGBTQIA plus community. So it's like once you bring us up, it's like it's synonymous with HIV and AIDS. And guess what? We're no longer the number one community infected. It's our African American queens, it's our Black women. And that's why it is important, like Kim said, for women to start being a part of the conversation. Stigma isn't going anywhere. Unfortunately, it's attached to things across the board, but it deeply, deeply affects the conversations that we have about HIV and AIDS prevention in Black and Brown communities. And until we get past that, the numbers are going to still continue to increase. We just got to find a better way of doing it and bringing everybody to the table.
Absolutely, and that's another reason for this conversation. Felicia, I want to bring you in on the same question, just from a different lens, from a medical professional lens, and being from the South. What are you seeing in the last 5 years of your 10-year working in HIV and AIDS?
Again, everything I agree with everything that Spencer said, but stigma makes people stop talking. I've had patients who avoid getting tested, um, and avoid care simply because they are afraid of being judged. We are in a small rural community, and everybody know everybody. And some patients are afraid to come to their appointments, just because they don't want someone to see them, and the stigma that's attached. Once HIV is tied to shame and not health, people shut down. And I think that that's where we miss our chance to prevent and treat it. Normalizing the conversation is the key.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. Bishop Perry, this is very specific for you.
Mhm.
Presiding church and being faith-based representative. What role does faith-based play in or community organizing play in educating and supporting people living with HIV and AIDS?
I think it's
And
important. Say it again, Quincy. I didn't hear your
this
last piece.
not dealing with prevention with someone who is already tested positive for HIV. What role does the church play in nurturing that individual, or not?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is sharing love and not judgment. The Bible teaches us in Hosea 4 and 6 that my people perish because of a lack of knowledge. And because of that lack of knowledge, sometimes there's judgment, there's shame, and all of that stuff. And I've decided years ago, I've been pastoring for 26 years now, and I've decided since it has affected not only my family, but friends and different ones that I've known. I've decided to have the conversation because we'll talk about cancer, we'll talk about sickle cell, we'll talk about, high blood pressure, we'll talk about anything else in church. And we'll pray for people. But when it comes to HIV and AIDS, it seems as if there is this shame that is attached to it. So I've tried my best to bring in resources, have these type of conversations, and to speak to others, and then just share a community of love. Make people feel like, listen, you're not alone, you're not by yourself, and have testimonials and different things like that, so that people will feel uplifted instead of shame or guilt.
Love it, love it, love it. Um, Sorrow Kim, how can we better address the intersectionality of racism, health care access, and HIV outcomes?
I think that we have to look at the system. A lot of people of color do not want to go to providers because they don't see providers like themselves. And if you don't see somebody like yourself, you're not as open to share or even go to it. A lot of people feel that providers not like themselves have biases. Like I have a lot of friends who are gay, and they're like, "Oh, I went to this provider. They said questions. They judged me, but judged them, but not by giving them the care, but by the way they treated them." You know what I mean? And so we have to really look at this. We have to look at the providers we have. You know what I mean? And we also have to make sure that people know that there's services out there to help them navigate the system. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people who are of color who don't want to go to the services because they don't know the insurance. How am I going to pay for it? They might say something's wrong with me, and I'm going to be broke financially. Like I'll be the first one to say, when I became positive, I always told people the only thing I worry about is paying for the money, the medicine. I sat in the hospital for weeks saying, oh my God, people told me the medicine is going to be so expensive. That was before I learned the services that are out there. And I think that us educating people about services that are out there and that there are doctors of their same background out there to help them and guide them to the healthcare system so that they would have a good health outcome. You know what I mean? But people don't know. If they walk into a clinic, they see, I hate to say this, a whole room full of white doctors, or they see them on the internet, but they don't know how they can research and find doctors that are culturally competent for them.
Love it. Yeah, that's actually been my experience. Well, was my experience in the beginning when I first moved to Boston. Victor, from a single black young whippersnapper vantage point, same question.
I'm going to forever relish being called young, so thank you. Um, I come from the state of Mississippi, and I've been on prep now for about 10 plus years. And every time I'm talking to a friend, frat brother, whoever the case may be, please go get on prep, go check prep out. And oftentimes they come back to me and say, my doctor said I don't qualify for it. My doctor said it's not for me. Or some other stigma around, oh, my doctor said, or my friends say that's for them nasty boys. Um, our white brothers and sisters are on this medication. They are using this medication. They're sharing this medication with each other, the information around getting this medication. It breaks my heart when a person works up the courage to go into their provider and ask for it and be turned away. And that is some stigma that really must be addressed around like, are our healthcare providers even knowledgeable of what it takes to be on this medication? Are they qualified to administer this medication to us? So that's very, very important. A second thing I want to just talk about, I'm probably going to talk about later on, is also just we talk about stigma around people who have contracted HIV. I'm thinking about stigma around just queer black men and like how that denies us access to resources and community. I can't even start to think about PrEP and or HIV medications if I'm worrying about where am I going to lay my head because I got put out of my house when I came out. Where am I going to find my next meal? What resources are out there for me to just meet my basic living needs before I can even start to think about what's happening over here. That's very important and a conversation that must be had also.
And Quincy, may I say on what Victor says, that is the crucial things. When we look at this, we have to first help people with their basic needs. We can't get anybody on medicine, into care, or doing anything if their basic needs are not being met. And I think that that's one thing we try to do through different agencies is that we have to go back to hitting people's basic needs. If their basic needs are not going to be met, they're not going to take medicine. They're not going to, if they're not safe. Like I always see a lot of my trans sisters who, they start taking medicines, hormone replacements, but then they stop because, as he said, they're put out on the streets. You know what I mean? They're in shelters or they're living from person to person or doing different traits just to survive. You know what I mean? If you're trying to do your basic needs, you're not going to. You can have every doctor you want to on earth, but you're not going to be successful. And that is a big thing in our community.
Absolutely. If you don't have housing, if you don't have a job, you don't have access. You can't get to the doctor. So totally understandable. Kim and Victor, stay on this. I want to ask, just elaborate a little bit. You talk about prep that works for you, that you've been 10 years deep. Kim, I know some of the work you do. Felicia, I know some of the work that you do. What has actually worked in your opinion? And Kim, you can go first.
Talking
What
to
has that?
people one on one, coming to ladies, coming to men, and giving them my story. You know what I mean? And being there for as a support for them. You know, like I always laugh when I hear the word prep because when the city of Boston did this big prep campaign, I'll never forget, I showed up and I sat there and went up to somebody and went, why would you put signs in Ruggles Street Station on the marquee? I said, I'm a Black woman. I got a child. I'm running to the train. Or I'm a woman who at 7 o'clock in the morning, my big deal is I got to get to work by 7:30. I'm not going to read the signs. But when they handed me some flyers and I went out and handed some ladies I know personally one-on-one, explained to them the flyers, what prep was, I was able to get about 6 or 7 ladies I knew on prep. You know what I mean? And they said to me, I never forget. I always said to one lady, "Did you ever see the flyers? Did you ever see the sign?" And they were like, "No." Going to it to personal one-on-one, being out there. You know, they did not know I was a lady who never took prep. Actually, one lady to this day still thinks I take it because I advocate and my voice is saying, "Hey, this is the benefits of it." You know what I mean? Being out there in the community talking to people.
Good.
I would
Love it.
agree. I would agree.
Victor,
I
what
would
has
agree. I
worked?
think
What has worked for Black men?
using myself as an example, I think
Mm-hmm.
coming in, no judgment. Hey, I'm here for you. What you want to say?
Mm-hmm.
And disclosing, I don't have a problem with people that have HIV. I've dated people that have HIV. I have been in close friendships with people that have HIV. And saying those words out of my mouth is what helps brothers like kind of tear those walls down. People who are affected by the virus, people who are considering getting on prep, like disclosing within myself, and it's a one-on-one basis, but that vulnerability, I always say vulnerability begets vulnerability. So like if you're vulnerable, if I'm vulnerable with you, then you're vulnerable with me and we're able to have a real conversation without patriarchy and toxic masculinity being in the center of that. So being able to have that conversation one on one, but again, using myself as an example, knowing that I'm coming in saying I gotta put my cards on the table and let you know I'm here for you to be able to trust me to put your cards on the table because that stigma is real, is visceral. You can almost cut it with a knife how real that stigma is. So one brother coming in being vulnerable with another brother is what helps that happen.
And also guiding them to get access. I'll never forget
Mhm.
where I work at. There's been a whole handful of gentlemen I've actually went with to Fenway Health with them and introduced them to a doctor to get them on prep. You know what I mean? And then while I do that, I introduce him to another gentleman or a person who is, you know, in that on that team and say, hey, this person can help you. So you have another support system besides myself. You have somebody else. I will never forget the story about I had one gentleman who to this day always thanks me. And he's like, I did not know, but I heard about prep. But when you brought it up in a meeting, we were just casually talking. He was a gay man. We were talking, and he's like, it's really, he goes, I wish I was on it years ago. He goes, I'd heard about it, but no one ever took the time to go with me to the doctor. He goes, I was scared to walk in the door. He goes, and a lady walked in the door with me and sat there and introduced me to somebody. You know what I mean? Taking somebody.
Yeah, that works. That mentorship, just caring about your fellow brother and sister, all those things work. Felicia, same type of question. What's working, especially down south? You work in a small town. Um, everybody knows everybody. What's working down there in North Carolina?
Meeting people where they are, that means just not, physically, but mentally and emotionally too. Um, People respond best to when conversations are real. Go to the community events, go out to the barbershops, the salons, be respectful and relatable. I've talked to, some young Black men and they tell me, I don't have to get tested because my girlfriend gets tested regularly. You know, that's I hear that so so much. So that's the one of the issues also, lack of the education and share responsibility. So educate, when we slow down and explain prevention in plain language and create spaces without judgment, people open up, trust and consistency, to help raise that awareness, turning that awareness into action.
Love it. Make it plain. Brother Malcolm. Make it plain. All right. Bishop, I grew up in the church. Love the church, love singing in the
Mhm.
choir, love going to my grandmother, mom, super duper religious. God rest her soul. Got into the church. I was even married in a church. One of the first gay weddings in a Methodist church. So religion, or I should say my relationship, not religion. My relationship with God is super important to me. As a Black man, I just understand our ancestors and what God and Jesus did for them. So I'm aware of all of that. But growing up in church, did some things that I may not be proud of. But I never heard conversations, and I knew people were having sex because children were having, just popping up, and you know, people getting married and all stuff. So I know sex was being had in the church. Why do you think that conversation is not so prominent in churches in general? Not necessarily the Black church, but in the religion in general. Like sex and sexual health is not discussed. What do you think are the reasons for that?
Like you, Quincy, I grew up in church, been in church all my life, and unfortunately, in church, we like to talk about stuff we don't know about. But the things that we should be talking about, we pretty much push back from. Um, I think sometimes it's a hard conversation because we were taught and we are taught that sex before marriage is sin or wrongdoing or transgression against God. But like you said, and while you was talking, I was laughing because that's my answer. While we don't talk about sex, we know a lot of people in church are having sex. And so I decided as a pastor that I was going to have a conversation. It was maybe back in I would say the early 90s. I was a part of a ministry, Healing Our Land by Minister Franklin Hobbs. And I didn't know um, how I guess, you know, fast paced that was for the church. I just thought we should be talking about it. It's affecting our community. We should be talking about it. And because I was a pastor and a part of these conversations, and there was one time the ministry had people to come in and be tested, and I was unaware. I was ignorant. I didn't know that people did not want to get tested because of the stigma of whether they would be straight or gay or whatever the case was. So I was, as a pastor, I was tested, and people began to suggest what my sexuality was based on that. I think that's a lot that de- deals with or goes a long way with why the church does not talk about certain things. But I've decided that in certain safe spaces and appropriate spaces, of course, that we need to have these conversations because people in church are having sex. I don't care what anybody says. I've been in church all my life, so I know it's true. And I also believe that the church is a part of the community. So it's not just your four walls. We as individuals are the church. So we should be talking about things that are affecting us and our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Bishop. Anybody in the audience is faith based, you pastor in a church. Um, I invite you, I encourage you to be like Bishop and step out there, because that is profound. I know you heard Curtis in the beginning when we kicked this thing off. Our testing initiative for Black men is 25. And when I say that to people, I'm like, only 25? You would be surprised how incredibly hard that is. So if you're on this call and you're listening and you haven't gotten tested in the last 6 months, we encourage you to be a part of that 25 and beyond. We want to show people that once you get past the testing part, that's where the real work is, whether you're positive or negative.
And
So leading,
Quincy,
yeah, go ahead.
Quincy, could I add this as well? I was born with sickle cell anemia as well. So I've always been a part of blood disease kind of conversations. And so I may have been more advanced in education and what's out there, especially when HIV and AIDS was a major thing. So when I made the statement of, people would assume that because I was tested that I was straight or gay, that didn't affect me in any way at all. I know I'm a straight male, but I understand how it may affect someone else. So I think that's why it's an issue in church, but that's no excuse.
No excuses, no excuses. Thank you, Bishop. Spencer, you just a while back you disclosed that you are a HIV positive Black man. Kim, you also disclosed with the audience as well that you are a HIV positive Black woman. So here we have two people with lived experience. How can we, the community, how can we empower you living with HIV, thriving with HIV? How can we encourage more people to share their stories and reduce the stigma? Spencer, you go first.
Um, I want us all to be very present to the fact that the word stigma keeps coming up, right? And so, in order for us to get to a place where someone like myself or Kim is comfortable disclosing our status, the first thing we have to do is address and erase stigma. Just like Bishop said, it's okay to talk about all these other blood issues in churches or in communities like cancer and sickle cell and autoimmune deficiencies, but we still haven't normalized the conversation around HIV and AIDS. Well, it was really hard for me when I came out with my truth because, like you, I grew up in the church, and the church sets the tone for so many things. Can we just talk about the history of the church really quick and how important it is for the churches to break the silence and be involved?
We
Or
will
do you
get
want me to
into that.
just stick to
Yeah,
okay?
we're
Because
gonna we're
I
gonna
mean,
get into
because
that.
it's so important to it's important to me answering this question. So what I'm gonna say is that the support, just the support around the conversation and creating and cultivating safe spaces for us to have those conversations. Until that happens, this one. I'm sorry. This one is really heavy for me because I know what I deal with as a Black man first, right? And then I know what I deal with as a Black man who identifies as queer, bi, gay, whatever label, not even important. And then just navigating through that is difficult enough. Someone already said that we have to deal with the basics of what somebody is, just the basic necessities of life. But when you throw that in, it just complicates everything across the board. Um, I would say the amount of courage that it takes to come out is it's just ginormous, and it does change everything. Like as soon as you tell somebody that you're HIV positive, the first thing that they see is all the elements that come with that. They don't see they don't they don't see you anymore. They just see the disease. They don't see you, they see the disease. And as long as we live in a world where we see the disease first and not the person, I really don't see I don't see this changing in any way. I don't know what Kim can add. I'm sorry, I'm in a vulnerable space with this
No,
because
no, no worries. Take your time. Take
I
your time.
just
And
had
trigger
an
warning out
incident.
there to the audience.
Yeah,
This
I
is a
just
difficult
had an
topic.
incident where I was given opportunity. And once I filled out the questionnaire and had to talk about my health history, then that opportunity was taken from me.
Mm.
And they didn't say it was because of that, but I know it was because of that. And these are the conversations that are tough to have, but these are the conversations that we need to have so that people can see the other side of HIV. It's been sensationalized in such a way that we think that the pill controls everything, but the pill does not control everything. There's a psychosis that comes with it, and there's a mental part of being HIV positive that we don't talk about. Having to get up every morning knowing that this virus is in my body, and it is taking a toll on me every day, not only my physical, but my mental. And these are conversations that need to be had too. So for this one is, I'm gonna pass this to you, Kim, because I am getting emotional because as much as we are thriving and we're living, the challenge of doing that comes with some really high stakes. And it's high stakes that we unfortunately have not created a space to talk about publicly. Everybody wants to know the pretty side of HIV and AIDS, but nobody wants to know the ugly side. And unfortunately, that's all we show is the pretty side. And so that's where people think it is. When I hear about PrEP and PEP and all of this, I love that we have those medications, but we need to also talk about the sexual responsibility of having those medications and what will happen on the flip side if you're not adhering to it. Like this conversation, whew, it's very triggering for me. I'm sorry, guys.
No, no worries. No worries. Trigger
I'm sorry.
warning for the
That one
audience
was
is
that one was a lot for me.
oh, we appreciate you for being so brave, and just being so authentic. You've always been that way. Soro Kim, anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, he is right. You asked how you do the day. Um, I'll be honest. I'm listening to the pastor, and initially, the church was the hardest for me. Um, when my minister, I had a minister once that found out, and I'm very active. Everyone knows who knows me knows I'm very active in my church. And this lady took away from me almost everything I did in the church for 3 or 4 months. Basically speaking, I'd walk in there and stand in the back. All of a sudden, because she found out I was HIV positive, I couldn't sing in the choir. I make this great punch my church loves. Okay. I couldn't make the punch. I couldn't even, I've been a Sunday school teacher since I was in fifth grade. I've been a Sunday school teacher for over 40 some years. She told me, oh no, you can't do it because you're HIV positive. And I'm like, why? Oh, well, the perception the students' parents would have. I've been going to church with these people for years. And I always tell people I had to pray a lot. But I turned around one day and walked in there and said, no, that's not what God had me there for. You know what I mean? And it's just the thought that this woman said because I have a disease. I'm like, no. You know what I mean? No, I'm not. I'll never forget the day I walked up to her. I said, I am not kissing your, I'm not, no, I'm not sleeping with. No, I have a disease and that's good. But you know what? I can be a role model for your students in my Sunday school class. I can be there as a comforter. I said, I know that somebody else in this building has somebody who is affected by HIV, and they can come to me and talk to me, and I can teach them something. You know what I mean? I say that that's was I think to this day it was probably the hardest thing, and I quickly said no. You know what I mean? And I said I will teach people, about HIV. Like him, somebody recently walked up to me and as an acquaintance I've known for ages and said to me, because I've lost on my own working out a lot of weight, And they said to me, "Oh my God, you're getting thin. Is it because of the HIV medicine?" And I just looked at them and I went, "Excuse me?" And I go, "No, it's because I stopped eating, I'm exercising, I'm running around." I said, "The HIV medicine has nothing to do with it." I said, actually, it's my diabetes. I want to be off of diabetes medicine. I didn't even think about HIV medicine when I went on my big weight loss kick. I wanted to lose weight because I decided I did not want to be on diabetes. And I turned around to the person, I said, "Why would you bring everything back to HIV?" I said, "Why are you bringing it back to HIV?" I said, not, and I believe truly, I do not want to be defined by having a woman who is HIV. Actually, as I told them, I have an AIDS diagnosis. Okay, I was super sick. And I said, hey, as sick as I was in the hospital to be where I am today, I'm very proud. I said, but I did it because I did what I had to do to be living my successful life. And I just don't like when people say that or look at that. And I think that's the hardest part. And then, or getting this, "Oh, you can't be HIV positive." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I am. So whatever. That's another thing." I always put back, I said, "And you have high blood pressure, you have this and that." I said, "Because it is hard." You know what I mean? And like him, there's been things that, as I said, in my church, they wouldn't let me for 6 months. They would not let me. But
Yeah.
I decided that nothing is going to stop me. I'm going to do what I have to do. And as I tell people, I will tell somebody that I am HIV positive because you know what? There is somebody in their life. That
Got
is
it.
it. And that they cannot. I've heard of people saying, "Oh, they go to places." I have a good friend of mine. She goes to her parents' house. They give her paper plates. I said, "Oh yeah, watch me go." I went with her, went in the cabinet, picked up a piece of china, sat it down for me and her, and we sat there and ate. And I told them, I said, "If you want to throw your plates away, you can, but you got a nice dishwasher. Put the stuff in there. It'll sanitize everything. I'm not giving you anything." You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's
No,
how her family now accepts her more so. I'm here to teach people. Yes, it is sometimes it's very painful. You know what I mean? But I'm here to teach people because you know what? Now the stigma, yeah, it's for real. I tell everybody, everyone goes to me, "Oh no, 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 stigma's real. It is very real."
it's
And
definitely real.
it still
Both of
exists.
Yeah.
you, both of you brought up the Black church. One of the main reasons why I wanted Bishop Perry's present here, because again, a lot of things happen to us in and around the Black church. So, Bishop Perry, this one's for you, and Victor, I want you to kind of chime in, Victor and Felicia to chime in on this, but specifically to Bishop Perry. In what ways can sermons or church programs incorporate HIV education while remaining sensitive to religious values? I understand that there are rules or whatnot, but as Sorrow Kim said and Brother Spencer said, there's been some harm, some damage caused in the Black church. So, what are some ways that, or are there sermons that you have preached before or look forward to preaching that can incorporate that type of support? Um,
Absolutely. Before I answer that, I want to, as a representation of the Black Church, speak to Kim and Brother Spencer and apologize to you all for any kind of negative interaction you have had with the church. That is unfortunate that the church is supposed to be a place of love, community, unity. Scripture says, "Behold, how good and pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity." So I would like to apologize on behalf of the Black church. But to answer that question, um, I'm sure some of you have heard of the text in the New Testament, the woman that had an issue of blood for 12 years, and she went to touch the hem of Jesus's garment. But in that text, and I'm not here to preach. I just use this as a sermon, and I was judged as a pastor and preacher because I asked when I heard that the numbers were going up with our African American women. I used that particular text on a Sunday, and I posed a question. We don't know what her issue of blood was. Could we consider what if her issue of blood was HIV and AIDS? and I stopped.
Mm.
How would we treat this woman? Because this woman in the text had, because she had this blood disease, she had to go out of the town. She could not go, she could not be around people. And the what was so important about what she did, the miracle in what she did, was not only pressing through the crowd because she wasn't supposed to be around people, she was bumping into people, all of that stuff. People knew what her condition was. And she decided that I just need to get to Jesus. I want to touch him. And so while I was preaching and teaching this message, the video went viral in a negative sense because I
Mhm.
said this woman had HIV and AIDS. I never said she had HIV and AIDS. I said consider how they treated her and how they treat us today. And that's what I did. So I think we could use, the church can do a much better job. um, Brother Spencer said when people talk about or they hear that someone has, the disease, they no longer see the person, but they see the disease. And we have to see the person. We have to. We have to love the person. We have to embrace the person. And that's where knowledge comes in. A lot of us are ignorant to, what what surrounds HIV and AIDS. We don't want to have the conversation. That's why the conversation is necessary. And that's why I've chosen as a pastor to be bold and to have these conversations, to preach sermons that, affect or to make us think. And, even if it puts me out there to a place where, people judge, I've been judged before for worse. So, you know,
No,
I
thank
think I think we should show more love and less judgment.
more love and always is always the answer. Victor, um, sorry, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you because we were talking. This goes along with what Bishop was saying and the question that I asked Bishop. Yes, we talk about the Black church. We also, as Black folks, this is Black History Month. We also talk about entertainment. We love our music. We love our movies. It's a certain demographic that no issue with Tyler Perry, but we have a whole following of
Mhm.
people that watch a Tyler Perry movie and be like, "That's how you get HIV," and that's how things happen to bad people. So there's that perception, and then our guy J. Cole. Shout out to J. Cole, great artist, just dropped his album, like 20 something songs, amazing songs, in my opinion. Um, but there's this one particular song, Safety. Go listen to it. Wonderful storyteller, J. Cole is. But long story short, he talks about someone that was in high school with him who was a little flamboyant or whatnot, and his life just tells the story of his life. And we all assume by listening to it that he passed away from HIV. And in J. Cole's wonderful narration, he talks about him dying because he was engaged in MSM, which is men having sex with men. And then he has like a slight little apology, maybe a half a second. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, something to that effect, and then moves on to the next story. Victor, same type of question, just taking the Black church out and incorporating entertainment and social media and all the other things that we consume. How
Thank
how
you.
can how is that navigating our world when it comes to disparities
Thank
and
you. And I would say, Kamar, you're not muted. I can hear you. I would say it's hard to remove the Black church from it. So I'm gonna start at the Black church and I'm gonna take us on
Mhm.
a bit of a journey, if you don't mind. So I'm from the great state of Mississippi, which means I too have been in church from the time I came out. And I've sat through many a sermons in church. And the best And we talk about how the church treats people who, in which they find out their HIV status. I want to take it even before that to talk about how the church treat Black queer men and Black queer people. And the fact that oftentimes we're not even in the church when we get those statuses. So we've left the church long before we even got the status. Um, and I think I'm doing a lot of research around what's called download men, DL men. And I think in the research is saying that the church for Black people has been our home of resources. So when you think about Black people in America, we're not getting resources necessarily from social institutions and things like that. We're getting resources from each other. So we're getting the information on where to find housing from other Black people. We're getting the information on where to find how to get on food stamps from other Black people. We're getting these resources and things that we need from other Black people. And the church kind of has always been the hub of that community. Whether you go to the church or not, the church has been the hub of that for the Black community. Once, as a Black man, you come out as queer, you are now the voice from the church and those resources.
Come on, Victor.
What take care of Black queer men are other Black queer men. That's who take care of us. In some type of way, and that's because we have Darnell Moore and Kelsey Lehman just released an article in which they're in conversation with each other and they're reflecting on James Baldwin piece that he originally published with Playboy 41 years ago. And what they're saying in that piece is how much of a cage Black masculinity actually is. We don't get the opportunity to be expansive in our Black masculinity because when you think Black male, you think this thing. And anybody that goes against this thing is no longer entitled to the quote unquote inheritance
Mm,
of Black masculinity.
speak,
We have
Victor.
been divorced from community. We have been thrown out on the street. And we can be the best leaders possible in our organizations, in our schools, in whatever the case may be. But we are seen as less than because we have had the courage to be able to stand in our full truthfulness and accept the expansiveness of our Black masculinity. So a
Ooh,
lot of
Victor.
folks won't come out.
Mm.
And this J. Cole song in which he talks about in it, and it kind of perks my ear. The same thing happened when Kendrick Lamar talked about his uncle that transition. I listen when I'm hearing these conversations because I know these conversations are going to be the conversations that reach my young people. These are the things they're listening to. These are the things, the media they're consuming. And in this conversation, if you listen closely to that song, J. Cole talks about how everybody in his hometown turned their back on his friend when he came out. And he was left without community. We talk about down low brothers as if they are the boogeyman in the closet without realizing we created them.
Oh, come on, Victor.
We created them. They're existing because we created it. I tell young people all the time, don't come out if you don't have resources that will take care of you. If you live in a home with your mom and you feel like your mom's gonna put you out, you feel like you're gonna lose your access to food, you feel like you're gonna lose your resources, don't come out. That's the same way with these brothers. These brothers feel like, and we learn from a young age. I heard my mom talking about the gay person, so I know my mom is not a person I can come out to. I heard my dad make a comment. I know my dad is not a person I can come out to. Now I'm sneaking and hiding and trying to keep this secret or overcompensating in my masculinity because I don't hold the hetero,
Wow.
cis hetero vest on. So now I'm overcompensating and causing harm to queer people to not be ascribe queerness onto my body because that equals violence. Queerness in the Black community, queerness for Black men equals violence to us at every turn. So when I hear things like J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar or whoever else in the media, in the public media, in the popular media that the young people are consuming, having these conversations, yes, my ears perk up. Because I'm like, okay, now this is an end. And I think more of us and more artists should be making this media in which the young people are consuming. I think it shows too. There's a question later on, but we talked through the youth. But I think the youth are light years ahead of us. The youth
Absolutely. Unafraid to talk about sex, sexual health. Thank you, Brother
blowing
Victor.
up these fraternities, blowing up these sororities, saying, no, we here, we want to have a conversation. You're not going to push us to the corner. You're not going to push us aside. We're going to cause a disruption at these regional conferences, at these conclaves. The youth are blowing it up, and I love them for it. And that's on the fraternity
Mhm.
and the sorority side. I love them for it because I've been banging my drum of inclusivity for Black queer men since 2011 when I came into my fraternity. I'll be 15 years at the end of the month. And I've been banging this drum and oftentimes banging this drum alone. So to see now youth standing up and saying, nah, we want this, and what are you gonna do for queer people, and how are you gonna take care of us? Where's our pride post? Controversial topic. Where's our pride post? That's it warms my heart.
No, likewise.
Brother
And
Quincy.
yes, yes, yes.
Could I ask a question? Could I pose a question? Because
Yeah,
the
you can
question has
do whatever
been
you want.
posed toward the Black church. Could I
You're the
ask
biggest.
Victor or Spencer or Sister Kim if she's still here? What are some things that you all think the Black church should be doing
Mm-hmm.
more of to um, be more sensitive or I'm using those words, but I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I want to
The
ask you
best
all.
sermon
Breaking the
I've heard.
silence, including
Yes,
us in the conversations,
yes.
having us there at the table. Don't assume that you know what it is that we want because you don't walk our walk. And because you don't walk our walk, you don't know what we need. It's the problem that I have, that I mentioned earlier with these organizations who says they're doing Black events, but don't include Black people in the table while they're planning the events. You can't have a
Or pay Black people
conversation
to do
about
these events.
helping somebody through something. Right. Ooh, don't get me started on that. You can't have these conversations without including these people in the conversation. And I'm glad, Brother Victor, thank you so much. Everything in me is applauding, like my insides, my outsides, everything, because that's where I wanted to go when Quincy stopped me, and I'm glad he did because it wasn't time for us to get to that part of the conversation. Let me say this and another stop. The Black church is so important because the Black church sets in motion what our movements are going to be. Like every successful movement that we've had in Black history, which is another reason why I'm glad we're having this conversation in February, which is the month that they designated us to have our history, even though it expands all 12 months. But we're not going to talk about that either. We have the Black movements that we've set off in the Black church: civil rights, incarceration, community health, social justice, advocacy, voters registration, labor laws. Like there's so many things. So if we make this a part of the movement of the Black church, just like Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, queer lives matter. Like if we start that conversation there in the church and people see that it's a conversation that we can no longer avoid or ignore, that is the start. Like brother just said, I'm sorry, your name just slipped my mind, but like you said, we learn from each other, right? So if we learn from each other, we know the biggest influence over Black people is Black churches.
Yes.
We keep saying it over and over again. All of us were a part of the Black church. I was a part of the Black church and had to hear over and over again what an abomination I was. That's what I heard when I went to church, no matter what it is that I was doing. And just like Kim said, most of the times we're the ones in the churches doing most of the work. So what can we do, Bishop? You can include us in the conversations. You can put us in the podiums. You can have us at the table. And it's not just you. This is the fight that I'm having here in California now, is that enough Black churches are not involved. And historically, when anything changes in the Black community, it starts with the Black church. That's all I wanted to add.
And that's the truest word. That is the truest statement ever made.
Thank you.
The last statement he just made was the truest statement ever made. And I feel bad for the Black church to a degree because men like a lot of my gay men, my gay females, friends, they're leaving the church because they don't feel welcome.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be honest, I invited a friend of mine to church, and he came a whole bunch of times. And I'll never forget one time I was talking about him because he just moved out of this area, and somebody goes, "Oh my gosh, do you know that man was a gay man?" And I looked at him, I said, "No, he was a 250-pound teddy bear of a black man." I said, "I don't really care if he's gay or not. He was here to learn the same thing you and me. He was here to hear the word." And the thing that hurts me was he's actually a minister. And because the way the church, because he was a gay man, the way the church treated him, he walked away from being a minister. And I'm like, this man, I mean, I've heard him preach, I've heard him teach. And I'll never forget, one day I said to him, I said, "Why don't you go connect with the church again?" He goes, "No." He goes, "No." He goes, People treated me too badly." And I'm sitting there going, that's a man of God. That's a man who was teaching people stuff. And because he felt ostracized because he's a gay man, he just walked away from the church. And I'm sitting there thinking, if this is just him, how many hundreds of men and females are walking away because they don't feel their voices are heard, or people are giving them the side eye and this and that.
Yeah, I'm I want to jump in just for a second, and I know I would get killed for saying this, um, but I don't know what generation we all are coming from, because the church is no longer that voice that it
Yeah.
used to be when we were growing up, where people hear things the first. It should be, because we're still standing up in the pulpit and we still have congregations and all of that stuff. But the hypocrisy in the church, how can someone say that you cannot do this, that, or the third when more than you know,
Oh yeah.
Say it, Bishop.
more than you
Go ahead and
Yeah,
say
know,
it.
the
plain.
people, some of the people in the pulpit, some of the people in the
Come on, Bishop.
choir, all
We
of the
know,
things.
Bishop. We know.
Uh,
We know.
yeah, I
Trust
know
me.
you
We've
know.
known. We've
I
known.
I
Mm-hmm.
know you know. And so the thing is, and we know too.
Mm.
And so I just don't what it's it's crazy to me to hear this. Like, I ain't gonna hold y'all, but it's crazy for me to hear this when I've been in church all my life and I know what I know. And so to hear three people say that I grew up in church too, but I no longer go because
Mm.
of how I was treated, or that's why I asked the question, what can we do? Spencer,
No,
thank you for answering that.
no, very, very
Mr.
valid
Terry,
question.
thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Bishop, for
yes,
asking
sir.
But
that.
you know what we can do? We can be present. We cannot walk out. Because I said, what happened to me, I'll be honest, at one time I said, "Oh, bump this," and walk, and I was going to walk away.
But
But a
you
friend of
stayed.
mine said to me, "You know what? If you walk out the door, then you are just letting them win."
Yep,
And
I
I'll never
actually
forget,
said
I
that to a
walked back in
frat
my
brother that's
church.
on the
I
call.
said, "I am a Sunday school
Gotta
teacher.
stay.
I do everything. My
Be
people
in their
know what I do."
face.
But as I said, if I had walked out that door, then I let them win.
Yeah,
And
you
that's what
let
we
them.
need to do. And I told my friend this: you go back to church and you sit there and you do what you do. Don't walk away. You know what I
Sometimes
mean?
for your own mental wellness, you have to walk away. Because
I
if
You
I
agree.
know,
had
oh, I
stayed,
walked away for 2 Sundays
yeah,
and I walked
no.
back
Mhm.
in and I said, "You know what? Let them beat me down, but they're not going to let me walk out because they're going to get the better part. They're going to win.
And
They're going to get what they
yeah,
want." You know?
there's two
Absolutely.
sides.
We are winding down with the time.
Okay, yes, sir.
As I said to Bishop a week ago, I could have a whole panel discussion alone on the Black church.
Yes.
When I was coming
Amen.
up with
Hallelujah.
questions, I had 24 questions specifically for Bishop Perry, and I had to get them, condense them down. Thank you to Brother Chase for helping me condense these questions down. But I do want to give the audience some time to do a question and answer, and just remind folks that today at 5 o'clock, it's an in-person conversation that Brother Curtis is spearheading. We are a part of that. Again, like I said in the beginning, it's free food. It's testing. If you want to be a part of that, 25 individual Black people getting tested, all those things. So I do want to thank the panel. I'm going to open it up. Again, we may not answer all your questions. You have my email. It'll be in the chat. You can email me your questions if I don't get to your questions. I think we can go over maybe 15, 20 minutes. I want to be respectful of everybody's time because I know you got plenty of stuff to do out here in the snow if you're in New England. And if you're down south, you want to enjoy that hot weather. So let's go with
Believe
Darrell.
Mr. Crawford or Frederick Crawford had raised his hand, but I'm not sure if he still wanted to speak. Sorry.
Mr. Crawford, you have the floor. Can you keep it under 3 minutes? Your question or comment.
I will keep it under 5 seconds because that was an accident. And congratulations, brother Roberts. Congratulations on making it to Sigma Land.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Go Mob. Anybody else want to raise their hand? Have a question? If not, we do have other questions. Like I said, it was almost 24, 25 questions. And again, we want to continue to do this, especially ZKS. We want to be the platform where you can have these difficult conversations. Elijah, you have the floor, sir.
Hi, so not so much a question, but just more a comment. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone who spoke today. I really, really appreciated hearing everyone's journey and experience. And, while I was listening, I just heard the word stigma be used so much, understandably so. And I think that it's important that not only do we talk about stigma that is happening outside of the community, but we also talk about the stigma that we ourselves are embodying. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a therapist and I work with a lot of folks, right, to address anxiety. And so a lot of the work that I do is highlighting a lot of the talk, a lot of the beliefs that you hold about yourself or even about the community around you. It's passed down from generation. You are embodying, you are holding on to generational violence. So being able to address the stigma that you are holding within yourself, but also as we were talking about, I know we talked about having access to providers who look like us, and I think that's a fabulous place to start. But as we often say, right, not all skin folk is kinfolk, right? And so for me, there's a book that I would like to recommend. It's called Decolonizing Therapy. Great read. It doesn't have to be just about therapy. It's about just the healthcare system to begin with. But it's important when you are meeting with your therapist, your social worker, your OBGYN, whoever it is that you're seeing, your dentist, right? Yes, you look like me, but what is the work that you have done as a provider to deroot that stigma, right? So especially when it comes to accessing care around HIV or other STIs, right? Yes, you look like me, but are you going, like as Victor, I think, had mentioned earlier, a lot of providers are still blocking our community from getting the resources that we need. So just wanted to put that out there. Make sure that you ask those questions of your providers. But again, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Elijah. And I also wanted you to touch a little bit on, if you can put in the chat group. I know Elijah he's a part of this committee that helped plan this event. And I want to make sure that you are able to put your words of affirmation. Elijah put together some affirmations for people who may be afraid to get tested or afraid to talk about their status, whether you're negative or positive. So please put that in the chat so people can look at that. I think they're wonderful affirmations. Like just to know that you are loved, you are important, your status is important, your health is important to the entire ecosystem. So any other questions before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I have my hand raised. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Okay. Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I am good. Thank you so much. So thank you for this conversation. I'm extremely ignorant when it comes to AIDS and HIV, and I was actually introduced, Kim was actually the first person I've ever known to be affected by the disease in my life at all. And she really and truly cracked me over the head when she explained it to me that she was positive. We were going to get a freaking sandwich, and she was like, yeah, when I got it, and I was like, what? Like, wait, whoa, we got to slow this down. Like, so I appreciated the way that she, I don't think she did it intentionally, but she pretty much was like, yeah, it's in your face. It's here. Like it is what it is. And she was very open to explaining to me how she contracted it and having a conversation. And I appreciate the fact that she allowed me to be ignorant in that moment, because I had never, and even when Victor was talking, I had to Google what PrEP was. Like, I'm completely ignorant to it. And so I appreciate this conversation. And I have the pleasure of serving as Kim's president in our Zeta chapter. And I just want to say to her, nothing against any of the other panelists, because you were all very wonderful. But thank you so much, Kimberly, for always, doing what you do and always being the voice for the AIDS and HIV community. And I know that you're not LGBTQ. Sorry, I'm pretty sure I missed some of them. So please just take that as my ignorance and not me trying to be disrespectful. But she always big ups that community as well. And even though she's not necessarily directly a part of it, she always brings it into the conversation. And so I just wanted to say thank you to her. And Delta Omicron Zeta chapter is extremely proud of you and for what you do, and always serving on these committees. And she left out of our chapter meeting. She was like, "Deuces, Jen, I got to go. I got somewhere I got to be." And I just want to say thank her so much for what she does, and just say how proud we are to call her soror.
Absolutely. Very dedicated. Like I said in the beginning of the conversation, I've known Kim for over 15 years, and she's been talking that talk and walking that walk all 15 of those years. Thank you so much, Soro. Next, we have Belinda. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say that, number one, thank you for having this vulnerable space. Thank you for everyone on the panel that has shared. As a friend of yours in Greek world and associates, I've learned so much about you guys, and that doesn't change how much I love you guys. So, um, but I want to say thank you for holding this space, because even as, I mean, I love my men, hetero, but I have no diseases or anything. However, I've learned a lot over my days, especially at Northeastern, where there's been panels and you've met people and everything. So it's good to have these conversations kind of come up. And as a person who also grew up in Catholic church, it's interesting how the dynamics, I pretty much stopped going to church only because as a developing young teenager, I felt like conversations were not directed towards me and what was happening in my life. It was like, oh, honor thy mother and father, listen to what they say. But then it was like, but what part of the conversation becomes, how about you actually speak to your kids and listen to the kids and vice versa, right? So that's a whole different conversation for another day, but actually holding space. I think in churches, doesn't matter what church you go, what the background is or anything. I think just holding space, having spaces like these where conversations can be had, can be learned, because eventually, ultimately, it does affect my world at some point, because of the circles and everybody that we go through, hetero or homo, sorry, whatever. Um, it slowly affects my
Okay,
life
I've
because
heard
it's
worse.
also, sorry, it slowly affects my life because it's also in the same stigma of, like, if I go to the doctors, do they know how to treat me, and vice versa. So everything actually falls in line together, and I'm glad that you've held this space. I hope this space continues. This should be probably, if you could turn this into like a weekly conversation for the month of February, whatever, like, this is something I highly encourage that you guys do, and make sure you spread the word. I'm happy to be here as your Sigma Gamma Real sister, to represent. But thank you so much for everybody in the panel. You guys are a blessing, and you guys are doing the Lord's work in terms of sharing your experience, because that is how we actually get to navigate and how we deal with each other. Is you have to be able to share what you've gone through in order to help somebody else either not go through that or help them navigate through how to get through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your kind words and your continued support. You're always showing up. Before I go to Victor, yes, we will be having more conversations. Shameless plug. February 15th, which is next Saturday, we are having our first Blue Brunch, brunching with the mob. You're all more than welcome. Please RSVP for that, because we need a head count. It will be at Park 54. And the Blue Brunch series is not only about us breaking bread at a Black-owned business or restaurant, it's also about having these difficult and intimate conversations. So yes, February 15th, we'll still be talking about how we can connect people to access, and to care. And then in March, we'll be talking about something else, honoring our women and keeping the different topics. going. If you have a suggestion that you want us to address and it's not on our radar, please just send me an email and we'll do our best to make that happen. Victor, you have the floor. I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to talk to Brother Bishop Perry. Um, it's not just the Black church. I want to make sure I say that too. I also want to talk about these organizations, Divine Nine,
Tyler Perry.
the Greek World. These conversations, and my hats off to the brothers of Phi Beta Sigma for having this conversation. And Jennifer, it really touched my heart for you to give Kim her flowers in this conversation because we talk about Black organizations, Black groups, and homosexuality, queerness, HIV status, all that stuff is still taboo, even within our organizations. So being able to have these conversations in a Greek world is important as well. And there's a lot of folks that walk away from our orgs because of homophobia. There's a lot of folks that don't engage because they don't feel welcome or if they belong. So this we talk about what prevents HIV. We talk about preventative care. Community prevents HIV. Community is preventative care.
Oh, thank you. Love it, love it, love it. Again, we want to really, really thank all of you as we bring this to a close. Let's carry forward the insights, the stories, and the strategies shared by our panelists, remembering that awareness is the first, just the first step towards action. HIV continues to impact the Black communities disproportionately, but with education, open dialogue, love, care, and collective commitment, we can break down stigma and strengthen prevention, treatment, and support networks. Let today be a call to action to not only stay informed, but to be active advocates in our communities, ensuring that every person has access to care, resources, understanding that they deserve. Together, we can close the gaps, fight stigma, and move toward a future where health equity is a reality for all of us. Thank you so much. Again, hope to see you today at 5. Hope to see you February 15th at our Blue Brunch at Park 54. Um, and just sending everyone love and blessings. Again, we had over 80 people register for this difficult conversation. We had about 65 to 70 people on the call at a time. That is profound. That is work that you all put in to make sure that people got here to hear this conversation. Again, as we see in the chat group, we don't want this to be a one and done. We want to continue it and we want to be able to help. ZKS is here to serve. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful, blessed, and safe day.